Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Collapse Club. How are we to live in the time of collapse? I'm David Baum. I'm in Seattle. With me today is Fred Ehresmann in Bristol, England. Hello, Fred.
Hiya, David. Lovely to see you again.
How are things in Bristol?
Things in Bristol are brilliant. Things in Bristol are just a smorgasbord of things to be grateful for, fundamentally. I mean, I could complain. There's always something to complain about. But when I'm looking at other parts of the world, Bristol isn't those other parts of the world.
Indeed.
You know? So, yeah, things in Bristol are fine, thank you. How are things in Seattle?
Nice. Today is overcast and cool. We are headed into spring. Uh, it is pleasant here. And again, it's not other places. There's so much to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Speaking of what to be grateful for, there is the present moment. Our topic today is the here and now. Um, this I plucked this topic from a podcast of yours that I heard recently, where you talked about the value of being present in the moment, particularly when you are talking to in a therapeutic conversation with
Yeah.
someone in your work as a mental health nurse.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to be present with someone in that condition?
Oh, really great question. Well, it's partly a function of a particular model of therapeutic work that I learned and came to embrace years ago. Um, and previous to that, my training had been pretty traditional, really. So the idea is, I'm an expert, and the person that comes to me with what they're suffering with needs me to be the expert. So they're talking, and while they're talking, I'm sort of listening to what they're saying, and I'm also thinking about what's really going on for this person here. So they're telling me what's going on, but I was kind of trained to be thinking about what's really going on, or what's really going on, and generating some kind of hypothesis about them. And what I noticed about that is actually I can't be present with someone while I'm listening to the noise of my head coming up with ideas about what's really going on for this person. Drumming up a formulation and a hypothesis and all the rest of it. So when I came across solution focused practice, which comes from a completely different perspective, which is basically that the person with a problem is actually the expert in everything in their world. And the person doing the helping has an expertise, but the expertise is in being able to ask questions that kind of invite that person to think and speak differently about the situation that's been troubling them. Which means I really, really have to listen to what they're saying so that I can know what the hell question I'm going to ask.
It's funny, that's a remarkable parallel to the process I'm learning to do in talking to people in this situation. Like I'm listening to you, and at the same time, I'm checking how many viewers do we have, and is the stream working? And there's this meta conversation going on
Yep,
in my head
yep,
uh, when I'd rather just be listening to
yeah.
you. So, given that that whoever is talking is the expert, what does it do for you to center in the here and now, not just in your therapeutic practice, but in your life?
So from my perspective, David, in terms of sensory reality, the only thing that's happening is actually right now. Like you and me here and now in sensory reality. This is it. So what that does for me is really focuses that and really enables me to be in with a chance of saying something helpful and constructive, as opposed to something kind of cobbled together in my brain from, it's probably something to do with their relationship with their mother, or, oh God, their marriage is in a mess, or maybe they need to do this, or, oh yes, there's a strategy for dealing with this kind of situation. And I'm not there. I'm not there with the person. I'm kind of semi there and then somewhere else over here. And what it does for me, ultimately, it removes me from the idea that I have to be responsible for coming up with something to sort out this person's life, which I know I can't. I can be present. I can listen. I can listen to the words the person's saying, and the root of the question I need to be asking is based in the thing that the person is just saying. And if I don't hear what it is, I'm not very likely to come up with a useful question.
Do we spend a lot of our time not listening?
I'll own it. I don't know about we. I'll own it here. Yes. Yes. For example, if I'm having a conversation about, I don't know, something political, and the person I'm speaking with, I don't agree with what they're saying, I am going to be very, very preoccupied with spending loads of mental energy tearing them down, roasting them out completely, and having them go, do you know what, Fred, you're right and I'm wrong. That's where all my energy is going to go. So I'm not really going to be spending that much time listening, because I've already decided they're wrong. So there's no point, there's nothing to listen to, really. It's just like, I'll nod and I'll go, mm-hmm, aha, and I'll do all the politeness that we do. But there'll be that kind of like, I'm kind of leaning forward, waiting for that moment where they take an in-breath and stop talking, where I can then dive in.
Yeah.
So in those occasions, I'm not listening. What else? Okay, if I'm having a moment where I've kind of lost my therapeutic orientation and I've got this burning need to feel good about myself by sorting out someone else's problem, I won't listen then either, because I'll be busy like, oh my God, this is a really serious problem. Okay, what can I do to help? What can I say to help? Okay, what can I come up with? I'm not listening. I'm trying to work out in my head. So just loads and loads of times where I'm not listening.
I think that that reduces the value of our relationships when we are intent on injecting ourselves into what is going on, rather than receiving and giving in a mutual interplay. It's impossible to be interrelated if you're not actually receiving what's being given. And if you have a tape you're waiting to play, then it's not an actual conversation, and that it's not an actual relationship.
And actually what you were saying there, I like that phrase, injecting a bit of myself into the dialogue, when in fact, if I just listen, I don't need to inject myself. I'm present. When someone's listening to what I'm saying, I can see they're listening. I can see everything about. There's no injecting needing to happen. It's like, wow, you're here.
Do you have to know a person? I was in a group meeting last night, and the topic was collapse and, the coming troubles and all of that. And these are very well-meaning people, kind people, intelligent people, but I don't know them. I don't have a history with them. And then it's online, it's mediated by video. And I felt like, gosh, I wish I had known these people for a while. I wish we could get together, have coffee, share food. Are we, in these days of isolation, are we terminally handicapped? Is there any hope that we can create meaningful relationships under the conditions we live now?
I believe so, yes. I mean, I kind of think about you and I, David. It's like I'd love to give you a hug. I know it's possible, but I'm not. It's like, yeah, I could get on a. I could organise to come over to Seattle. I got to find your place and yada 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 yada. That said, I feel a real connection with you. Right? We've had some lovely conversations, and we have a shared passion for the Beatles, and we batted that around a little bit. So, on the basis of that little piece of evidence that you got in touch, I saw your email, I saw your name there, I had that kind of like, oh wow, it's David. Well, it's a sign that I care. There, that kind of like, oh, I got an email from David. That's lovely. What's he saying? So yes, I actually do believe it's very, very possible.
I think it's funny that we can make those kind of, you recognize someone pretty much instantly. When I heard you talk in some group thing in deep adaptation, I presume, one of those meetings, and I'm like, wow, that's Fred. I like Fred. I want to talk. I want to hear from Fred. And thank you for your nice words about me. And there's some other folks, like I'll mention Chicken Foot Ranch is in our chat. That's Jordan and Karen Perry,
Mm-hmm.
people I've just met, very advanced thinkers in the field of collapse. I did a conversation with Jordan, and those Jordan and Karen are like, oh, real people. Gotta be in touch with them from far away. Found them on Twitter, but instantly there they are. I think this means to me, this has a higher metaphorical meaning or metaphysical meaning, which is that we exist not only in the in the physical plane, but there's a spiritual being that is us that can make connections literally throughout the world uh, by by these direct means, video, or even, I don't know, call it prayer, call it extra dimensional existence, whatever. But what I'm saying is there's more to our being than just our bodies and the places that we live. So, am I nuts, Fred? Is that crazy?
I think that's just the epitome of sanity, really, because what you're kind of pointing towards is that kind of question. Is there more? Is there more to us than we think we know? And that is actually really key. So coming back to that piece around being present with a person when I'm doing what I do for a living, is I need to put down what it is I think that I know. So one of the key tenets of the approach is not knowing. Not knowing is actually therapeutically, in the context of that model, it's actually a virtue, not knowing. Understanding that there are inevitably limits to what it is that I do, can, and will ever know. And just being down with that and kind of going, wow, thank God for that, because if all I know is right, then I might as well check out now because it's not great. It's just spectacularly rubbish. Yes, and yet and actually, I only know what I know through Fred's nervous system. That's it. That's all I got to go on here is my nervous system, and that's limited as well because it's a human nervous system. So I'm looking at something from an anthropocentric point of view. And last time I looked, I'm not the only species on the planet. I mean, we're working really hard at being the only species on the planet. Fair shout. But at the moment, I'm still not the only species on the planet. And let's really make sure that stays that way. Because there are the myriad other perspectives and knowings all around us that, we may never have access to. Yet somehow we humans have kind of become really addicted to this idea of knowledge. I know. Maybe we don't, Maybe we don't.
Philosopher and neuroscientist Ian McGilchrist, he posits that we actually have two minds which correspond to the two hemispheres of the brain, and the side that needs to know is the left hemisphere, which does things it does things in bits and it does things sequentially by logic. The right hemisphere sees everything at once and is sensitive to flows and relationships. And it is the communication and interaction of those two hemispheres that create the unified human mind, uh, within which there exists that important division. So when you talk about being addicted, it means the left hemisphere is getting too big for its britches. That's McGilchrist's theory. So about the here and now, um, if the present moment is really all there is, and I actually agree, then what about memory? We chatted about this a little bit, but if now is all there is, then where are my memories? Did those things actually happen? Did I actually live the life that I remember? And what about the future? Are the imaginings of, I'm going to reach out and take my cup of coffee? Does that even exist? How do we reconcile a faithful belief in the here and now with memory and imagination? That's my question for you, Fred.
Yeah, memory, a funny old business. Because in my area of work, there's a speciality which is working with people with dementia. Which is characterised by some really very, very serious memory problems, and it creates a lot of pain and suffering and hurt for people, because we rely so much on our memory to kind of steer ourselves through now, because we've got this kind of stuff behind us as a reference point, and yet it's just, I don't know, I find memory just incredibly unreliable. So just like a little story. So over here it was Mother's Day yesterday, so I had my parents over and we had family lunch and it was really lovely, and my dad told a story about it was about my choice of degree, my undergraduate degree, and he told this story that from where he was sitting is what happened. From where I was sitting, that didn't happen at all. It was just, but for him that was real. That was actually what happened, and for me that's not what happened at all. So it kind of leaves me thinking, do I really need to remember much more than where I put my keys so that I can get back in the house? Do I need to really remember that much more than I must remember to go and get some milk so that I've got something for my muesli in the morning? Like the grand memories, if you like, of the narrative of the arc of my life. Do I need to be bothering with those particularly? Because they don't strike me as being particularly reliable. And in fact, neurologically speaking, is the brain just runs out of memory space and it runs out of steam eventually.
Whoops. Oh no. Looks to me like Fred is frozen. Wow, this hasn't happened before, my faithful viewers. Well, I guess I'm going to sit here for a moment and maybe he'll just come back. Oh, there he is. Yes, hello, you're okay, good. Unmute, you need to unmute, please.
Is it me or is it you?
Yeah, I can't say. I was still here for me, but
yeah, you suddenly froze, and I kind of looked and went, what happened there?
oh, welcome back.
Yeah, where did I drop out?
The grand narrative is not particularly useful.
Oh, okay, yeah, lovely. So the grand narrative isn't necessarily particularly useful because it appears to me not to be particularly accurate. The brain only has so much storage space at the end of the day, and it will boot out what it decides we don't need to know, and it'll hang on to what it decides we do need to know. And that's independent of our conscious. That's not something. That's a whole other metaphysical conversation. Who am I? Who are you? Who is the I doing the talking? The brain just will go, no, you don't need to remember that, but you do need to remember that. So that just says to me, well, how do I know that thing actually happened? And then thinking about the future, well, there is, as part of what I do therapeutically, it calls itself a future-focused therapeutic approach. Yeah. So it's kind of part of its kind of power, if you like, is founded on a principle that we human beings, we'd really rather prefer our future to be a good one. Yeah, you'll be hard pressed to find a human being and you ask them, do you want your future to be rubbish? Chances are you won't find anyone. They'll go, no, I'd like my future to be great. And if my present's great, I want my future to carry on being great or even greater. So that's a kind of space for aspiration. And the key piece around aspiration, it is just that. It's aspiration, it's yearning, it's not attachment. It's not like, my future's going to look that big and it's going to be this shaped and it's going to be that colour and it's going to be that texture. I'd be kind of thinking, yeah, okay, well, enjoy getting all that together, because that may or that may not happen.
I think you make a really good point about narrative and story. I think human beings live on story. I think we're made of story, ultimately. The universe is built of stories. What do you think our story looks like going forward? I want to point out that in your background, I see some prayer flags and I see a psychedelic design on the wall behind you, but we can't quite see the whole thing. Okay, who is that and what story are they telling, Fred?
Oh gosh, I've no idea who that is. It's I picked that up when I was travelling in Southeast Asia many moons ago. What I actually really like about this particular image, and I don't know if you can see it, but up here, can you see where my finger is?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a Buddha there with sunglasses on.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, and that's why I got it, because I saw this incredibly far out thing and went, oh wow, that's really far out. All those hands, and it's all really ancient and Hindu and amazing and all the rest of it. And I went, wait, hang on a minute. Did they have sunglasses in those days? So the story it's telling me is not to take myself and the whole transcendental thing too seriously. And what was the other piece? Oh yeah, the story. Okay, so the story of where we're at. The story I tell myself about where we're at, it starts off with, I haven't the faintest idea what's going on in our world. I just don't. I have lots and lots and lots and lots, and I could to the power of 1,000, probably even more, lotses of information to tell me what's going on in the world. And it's all pretty conflicting, really. And so I can't really make up a story that I feel really settled with, that makes sense to me, because there's just all this information that I can't really process enough to be able to say, oh yeah, I know what's happening. So I don't know. So for example, at the one end of the scale, on the table, we have, I don't know, Guy McPherson just saying, we're all toast next year. But he's been saying that for 15 bloody years. It's just like, look, are we toast next year or aren't we? And if we're not going to be, stop telling us that we are, please, because it's really unsettling. If I'm going to dig in and just be ready for my extinction next year, I'm really happy to do that. But I want to be extinct next year. I don't want to be 2 years' time like, oh shit. And do you remember the year 2000? Like, what a hoo-ha, the millennium bug, and God knows how many prophecies were coming to fruition. And what happened? Nothing. Well, stuff happened, but it wasn't. It wasn't that story. So there's that story at the one end of the scale, and then right at the other end of the scale, you've got the kind of like nothing to see here. It's all fine. It's like, the climate thing's a hoax, and the world's travelling on fine, and human evolution is fantastic, and Yuval Harari even wrote a book called Homo Deus. It's like, we're going to be godlike figures. At the other end, it's all fantastic, on the other end of the scale, and in various bits and pieces along the... Where am I supposed to land here? So I kind of think, okay, there's something going on. It's unsettling, it's painful... And what's it the story of? Okay, I'll have to come up with a story. And I have a little thing, David, about if I'm going to come up with a story, I'll make it empowering, because it's only a story. So I'll kind of settle for what Joanna Macy has to say. The great turning. There's a turning. Something is clearly coming to an end. That much I can write. In terms of story, something's coming to an end. What's starting? Don't know. But I'm working on the principle that when something comes to an end, something else starts. I'm kind of working on the principle of that's kind of how the universe works. And as a very, very valued colleague said to me once, so far as I know, the universe isn't broken. So something ends, something else starts. So something's ending, David. And something else is starting. The details of that, I'm all ears. I don't know. It's stuff I like to bat around, but it's not really something I want to dig into and say, right, this is what's ending and this is what's starting. I'm kind of getting more comfortable with, I don't know.
I think to be sensitive to the new story, whatever it may be, we have to be able to rest calmly in the here and now. Trying to bring it back to our ostensible topic, that if we are sitting around telling ourselves stories of anxiety and trouble, we are not going to be able to hear the whisper of the new, of the new and surprising narrative that is coming to be in the current moment. In order to hear that gentle voice, we must be quiet. We must learn how to be quiet and how to dwell, if you will, in the right hemisphere mind that sees all and feels the flow and relationship. That's only available in the here and now, in what is present to us.
Yeah, and the bit of my brain that needs to know, it's kind of in overdrive, really. It's babbling away there, desperately trying to pull my attention towards that news item, or that blog, or this podcast, or that Twitter feed, just so that it can come to some kind of conclusion and be satisfied that it has a conclusion. And to be honest, it would manufacture a traumatic conclusion just so that it can have a bloody conclusion. It's not really too bothered about whether it's empowering or not. It's just like, great, it's this. Phew. And the situation, and so that situation kind of parallels itself with what I learned in my clinical practice. I had the same thing. I had the same training. I have to know, I have to be able to formulate, I have to be able to interpret, I have to be able to do these things. And I don't have to do anything. I do have to breathe. That's probably a good idea. And eating would be a good idea as well. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Actually, there's a certain bunch of stuff I probably have to do. For me, all the rest is open for negotiation.
Great. Well, just to respond to one thing you said, it is true, isn't it, that we want to know how the story ends. There are television shows, for example, that are useless, but I'll watch for hours at a time just to find out what happens next. How does it end? And then I'm up until 2 in the morning and castigating myself bitterly for wasting all that time. But the lure of resolution is incredibly powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. And there are some shows I watch, David, because I know how it's going to end.
Oh,
I know how it's going to go, and I know how it's going to end, because every episode, that's how it goes, and that's how it ends.
oh yes.
I've been watching a series that my youngest daughter put me onto called Queer Eye, and have you come across it?
I've seen, yes.
Yeah, so that you know what's going to happen at the end. You know that at the end, the person that had been nominated for the thing will be happy. You'll know they'll look amazing. You'll know their house is going to look fantastic. You know there'll be tears all over the place. You know their friends will just be there for them. And you know that the 5 dudes will be hugging each other and going, yeah, we did it. And I love that, because we all need that. We all need a break from the crud that's being thrown at us day in, day out, day in, day out. We all need a little rest where that kind of cortisol, where the stress hormone is just brought down as many notches as we can, and we get some serotonin in there, and we get some endorphins, and we get some oxytocin, so that we can feel like, because otherwise there'd be no getting out of bed in the morning. There'd be no. And me, I would like to make a contribution in the world, and the contribution I make is more likely to be constructive if I'm really managing my emotional and my psychological state. If I'm full of stress hormones, I'll make a contribution. Chances are it'll be to make myself feel better, basically. It won't be necessarily what is actually needed over there. So having times in my week where I sit down and I watch something, and I don't know the details of how the show's going to go, but I know I'm going to feel nice and I'm going to feel lovely at the end of it. And I'll have cried tears of admiration and being moved by what's been done and what's been said, and that'll be that. So that's my way around the knowing thing. I really struggle with box sets, where you have to watch the next one, then you have to watch the next one. Like the Game of Thrones was tortuous. Just like I simply had to give up 3 months of my life. There's no way I could have watched that 1 week and then wait for the next week for the next piece to happen. God, I can't do that. I need to know now.
All right. Well, perhaps you and I can agree then that we would like a story in which everyone ends up happy.
It'd be nice. It'd be really nice if if the story ended up with everyone being happy, and that's not how all stories end.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, I revisited Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I really wanted to revisit that and reread what it was that he had to say, and I don't know, a whole load of happy endings going on there. And yet there's what he spoke to in terms of finding joy and equanimity and peace of mind in a context where the odds are just unbelievably stacked against having anything anywhere near those kinds of experiences. Saying, yeah, that's possible. Really, it was beautiful, David. It was just like, right, okay. It might not end up with everybody being really happy, but that's over there in the future. It's like, it comes back to where we started. Like, what's happening is now. And it's something my youngest daughter, when we were talking about this, said. She just said it really, really beautifully. So if I do what needs to be done now, and I keep doing that, I'll end up in the future doing what needs to be done, right? That.
That's impressive. How old is
Yeah.
she?
She's now 11. She said that when she was 9.
Amazing. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Fred, I want to thank you for joining me today. We were all over the map today. Sometimes that happens. But it's lovely to hear your voice and feel your spirit, if I can be grandiose about it. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, David, for asking me to talk with you. It's really always a real pleasure, and it's never long enough.
I want to thank also Chickenfoot Ranch. I think it's Jordan, perhaps, Jordan
Uh,
and Karen Perry for
yeah.
joining us. And Kat Suarez, also from Deep Adaptation, joined us on the live
Oh,
chat.
hello, Kat.
So, and thanks to everyone who has watched this. Do you have a final word, Fred?
Do I have a final word? No, it's never one word. It's usually paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. Okay, the final thing I would say is whatever you do, whatever you do as you go through your life, practice, practice, practice being in the moment that you've got, because it could be the last one you ever have, and it's beautiful.
Amen. This is Collapse Club. I'm David Baum in Seattle. Until we meet again, farewell.
Is that it?